Rush it, but whenever you're ready.
And we are live.
Okay, welcome to the last day of Senate chat during the session. We appreciate our media representatives who are here to ask some questions, talk about policy, and if you that are watching us over the internet would like to send in some questions, please do so. I'm President Niederhauser, I'm President of the Senate, and this is Senator Davis, who's our minority leader. So we've got some balance here to discuss the issues this morning or this afternoon, and we'll take media questions now.
How do you think it's been so far? How do you feel 45 days in?
I feel really good today, and will feel really good tomorrow. Although I find that after the next day after the session, because we stay so late, I'll go into work tomorrow, and I'll start to work, and if I'm doing anything technical at the desk, I fall asleep.
Anything that you feel most proud that you accomplished this session, or will accomplish, I guess, before midnight?
I think we came up with a really good budget this year. It was really difficult, even though we had a lot of money to spend. We have some real big rock issues, and one of those is education. We did a Medicaid expansion, which we haven't been able to do before. That's progress, and maybe there needs to be some more progress. And Senator Davis has a different opinion of that, and he can express that today, and I'll take the arrows for that. But
we expanded the traditional Medicaid program. We did not do Medicaid expansion.
Yes, that's exactly what we did. And but the art here is you've got to get something that the House and the governor and the Senate agreed to, and at least that's what we could come up with this year. And I call that a success.
Anything you regret?
Well, I mean, I don't really have any regrets. There's bills that I don't like, but most of those actually fell, and that's not because of me necessarily, but I'm not sure if we got to a good place on medical marijuana. Senator Madsen's bill is not going to be moving forward. It's going to be the Vickers-Daw bill, and that has some modifications that's going to be made to it in the House. It'll be debated, I think, this afternoon sometime, or maybe even this evening. And so, I mean, there's possible we won't have anything other than Siozawa's resolution calling on Congress to declassify marijuana to a point where we could do the research on it and actually distribute a medicinal marijuana that's in the form and in the dose, in the dosage that's proven to take, that will help Crohn's disease, that will help epilepsy, and then we can distribute it through the pharmacy, because that's an established distribution system, and we don't need to set up a new distribution system. So that's, what else are we, there was one other thing I thought that really came to an agreement, non-compete clause. Very controversial, very decisive in the business community, and we've ended up bringing everybody together and coming up with a bill that, while they may not be in love with, but everybody can live with at this point. Senator Davis.
I think, of course, I'll go along with the medicinal marijuana bills that were here and the discussion. We had great discussion on that, in-depth discussion. I think the other one that hasn't been mentioned, and is still going on, is the death penalty, and whether that's going to take place or not. And I think that's up for debate this afternoon or evening. And so we've done a lot of heavy lifting on a lot of heavy issues, and I think we've resolved most of those, and most of them in an applicable way. But I think we've still got a lot of work to do, and I think there's a lot of issues that will be sitting in the interim, and we'll get back to next year.
Senator Okerlund, any other items you see as or the successes or disappointments of the session for you?
I'm sorry I stepped in a little bit late, so you might have already started talking about it, but, I thought we had a great year looking at education issues. Education funding was up, even above the governor's recommendation for public ed, and higher ed had a great year. We're able to do some projects this year, some buildings. We're able to do some performance funding and some things for higher ed that's going to make sure that our students in higher ed are taken care of for a long time, and we continue to train our students to be in a position to fill the jobs that we have with some of the programs that passed. In addition to the education funding, some of the program money is going to allow us to be able to address some training and education issues for continued growth, economic growth in the state. And I think that was something I thought was really important this session.
Lyle, or Senator Hilliard, excuse me.
Well, I think it's really ironic. I've received a lot of thanks from various groups about how their budget treated them, but I'm realistic enough to understand that tomorrow or the next day I'll read articles about how bad we were to them. We didn't solve all the problems. So today it's kind of nice having them all thank me for the work we've done on the budget. And again, I say it's not me, it's the whole legislature. And I think even Gene Davis, Representative Davis, or Senator Davis would say that the Democrats were involved in the budget process.
We were involved, and quite extensively we were involved. There are a few things I think that we can work on, and it takes resolve to get there, to put more money into the classrooms, and it's finding that resolve to be able to do those technical things at the university level and the public education level to try to get our tuitions down to be more inclusive of more people. So those are issues that are still on the table that need to be tackled.
And for good or ill, we're not going to come to an agreement on SB 54 issues. Looks like the judge will make a decision, and we'll have to at least live with whatever the judge decides on elections this year, and hopefully we can come back and deal with it again next year, or I guess next year would be the best time to do it, so people would have at least a year for it to settle in. And very divisive, very political, difficult issue for the legislature to come to an agreement on.
What are your thoughts on the death penalty legislation and the debate?
I voted for the bill on the second reading calendar. I've since found out some information, kind of a Virginia model, and that maybe we could move to, but the way we're using the death penalty here in Utah, it doesn't make sense that we even have it. At least that's my opinion.
Why not?
Just there's costs. It's dragged out for years. Victims are I don't think it's a reprieve or it doesn't help the victims in their healing to have this stretched out for 20 years and even longer. And so either we got to get rid of it, or we need to make that a lot better so that people can settle their lives and move on.
Is it a deterrent?
I don't think it is much here in Utah because we don't use it that often, and that's my personal opinion. Senator Hilliard, do you hear?
Well, I favor the death penalty, and the deterrent's not the issue to me. The issue to me is giving the prosecutor tools that they can use in a case. Now, you may get a serial killer that's killed how many people? And with the death penalty on the table, there's some things you can negotiate, hopefully, to find out where all the bodies are buried. Find out and bring relief to people who have no idea. All they know is their daughter went out someplace and never came home. And now you can find some of that stuff. When you take that off the table, life without parole, I don't think has the same leverage that the death penalty has. On the other hand, and I also agree that the victim's family should have some say. We can sit here in our offices up here and say, well, whatever, it's not deterrent or whatever it may be. I think people who have had family members killed should have some say in the question of whether the death penalty on the table or not. I noticed the other day, they were talking about the death penalty here in Utah, and the family said, no, we don't want it, and so the prosecutor took it off the table. So I think you handicap prosecutors when you take it off the table.
And I guess from a criminal point of view, I can't, I guess, see through those eyes in completeness, but would you rather have life without parole in prison or the death penalty? And well, some would probably maybe want to have the death penalty because you want to be in a prison the rest of your life.
Wasn't that Gary Gilmore?
I think,
Yeah.
it's interesting that you mention Gary Gilmore in this, because we tend to know who the state executes, but we don't remember the victims of those crimes.
And I think that's the point that President Niederhauser said. We need to speed up the process so that doesn't.
So
If
is
there's
that
a way
a way
to
you
do
would
it.
change it? That if you said either you're, Mr. President, if I'm not mistaken, I believe you said either get rid of it or change it. So change
Yes.
it means shorten the appeal
Yes.
period. So what
Yes.
should it be?
Well, I think there's some great arguments. Senator Hilliard brings up. There's some negotiation issues, and I think that the victims, there's justice done when when there's a crime of such egregious nature, as long as they're not dragged out for 20 years through appeals. And then again, who wants to be in prison the rest of their life? Is that humane? They say the death penalty is inhumane, but putting them in prison for the rest of their life without parole, is that humane? I'd argue that it isn't.
And then if you're one of those inmates, I want to kill somebody else in prison, right? Take me to a medical outside, and I want to kill somebody. There's no further deterrent. You never do.
So there's a lot of discovery, I think. We did pass it out of the Senate. I'm not sure what's going to happen in the House, but I think there's some more discussion to be had on the death penalty.
It was close
issue.
in the Senate, right? 15,
Very
12?
close.
Yeah.
I know two things that we have done over the years to help bring this process. Number one, to be a defense attorney to represent a capital case, you have to be death penalty or death qualified. So I, as a lawyer, I'm not death qualified as a defense attorney. So if a case came to me, I would not handle it. I'd have to get an attorney who is death qualified because they understand those things. So that the questions of an appeal that a novice attorney may make should be removed. It should be an attorney on that side, defense, who's been trained. Secondly, we do daily transcripts. One of the big problems is that the transcript doesn't get done for 60 days, 90 days after the trial. A daily transcript means there's a court report or a process that when you finish the day, the transcript's finished. So if it takes a 3-week trial, at the end of the 3 weeks, you've got the transcript done for the whole thing. We have an automatic appeal, Utah Supreme Court. We have rules about expedited hearings in front of there, so we're not waiting for the transcript, we're not waiting for those things. And hopefully the argument you hear oftentimes, well, the trial attorney was incompetent, he didn't do this, he didn't do that. You've got the best defense attorneys in the state who are specifically trained to handle that case, so hopefully remove that issue.
Other questions?
Yesterday, when you debated HB 220, you talked about how Senate Democrats and Republicans got along and worked well together. How might passage of that bill damage that relationship going forward?
Senator Davis?
I'm hoping it won't. I think with the makeup of Senate leadership today, I don't think it is a deterrent. If you look down the road, it could be. Depends on what kind of tensions come between the minority party and the majority party and the management. And remember, 220 got at really the hub, I think, of what the legislature's been about. And that is to take the management, the process, and make it a very fair process. And to make sure that our staff that serves both sides of the aisle are nonpartisan in their nature and their attitude going forward to make sure that the minority gets their bills done and the majority get their bills done in a fashion that serves the whole body and not one political party over the other. And that's how we've been served the last 40 years. And I think we set a roadblock that could tilt that balance going into the future. And I'm hoping not, because it's based on personalities and political personalities as well.
I don't, for me, it won't make a change. As I work well with our minority leader, we have meetings together, we work out our differences, and I don't have any desire to not have a good debate and have people speak freely. In being the president, being in a position there, controlling mics, I could shut off debate. I can do a lot of those things, but I'm one that I like to let the chips land where they may, and let our people speak out, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat on the issues, as long as it's respectful and not personally attacking anyone. So I mean that's as long as I'm president, that'll be the case, and I agree with Senator Davis that we probably need to now pause and look and see what we can do to make sure that we keep a strong nonpartisan staff, which has served us well over the years, and revisit this and see what we would need to do to make sure that's going to be in place, whoever, whether it's Democrats or Republicans in control. So
You mentioned, back to the death penalty issue again, you mentioned the Virginia model. The Virginia model, in essence, is what?
well, I mean they have a process that quickens it's a quickening process. It's the problem with the death penalty here in Utah, it takes too long. That's the problem, in my personal opinion.
Yeah.
And justice really isn't done in that situation for anybody on either side of this. And the costs of the appeals and all, and I understand, I'm not an attorney, but there's mandated appeals.
Yeah.
But there are ways, apparently, that they can shorten that up. And so, if it doesn't pass, I think that we might look into this and see how we can make it better, or repeal it at some point if that's the best policy.
Can that be done by legislation, speeding up that process, or is that something that has to be handled in the courts?
I don't know.
I think one thing, and I'm not law trained, and I don't know, but I would say that one of those issues is we need to put more money into our public defender's offices so that you have good qualified attorneys coming forward to represent these criminals.
I think we do in death penalty cases, but I think part of it is both ways. Number one, obviously if the problem's with the courts, they don't have clerks enough to go through the papers and get things lined up with the judges, that's a budget problem, and we can help them there. I think we've tried what we can. A number of years ago, the then current Justice, Mike Zimmerman of Utah Supreme Court, I invited him to Logan to speak to a group of professional people up there, talk anything you want. He talked about the judge's process of looking at a transcript on the death penalty case and how they go through that. I was so impressed with how he talked about that. And I think our judges take this very, very seriously. One of the questions I generally ask in a judicial confirmation hearing is, will you be able to, as a district court judge, impose a death penalty? And I've had some very thoughtful answers from our judges in doing that. And again, it's easier, I think, for us to sit back here in a vacuum and make those decisions. But I'll tell you, you talk about Gary Gilmore. Those people who lost their loved ones will never forget the names of their loved ones and their family. And I think they feel some closure. And Gary Gilmore was an interesting one, as I remember the case. He basically wanted to die, and his attorneys wanted to appeal. Yeah, I want to appeal. And so he ended up being executed in kind of that way. And I think it goes with what the president said. Life imprisonment, as you think about that, well, that's better than death. But You know,
Is it?
it's gonna, you know, and I don't know if I'd want to spend the rest of my life in that circumstance either, but,
Having seen people sitting in maximum security, I don't think
yeah.
that's where I would want to be the rest of my life.
But I think we would accept any proposals from the courts, because I think they don't like the criticism they get in the way of things we could do on a legislative basis to help them go through the process. But I think we've tried to address them. I'd be interested to see what Virginia does. I haven't had a
Yeah,
chance to look.
and I don't know enough about Virginia, other than I'm told that it actually, they've figured out how to shorten the process. And those are some things we'd have to look at. So,
There's apparently a report that the Urquhart bill may have been pulled. I don't know if that's
I
accurate.
don't know. Don't know.
My understanding, rumor, and it's strictly hallway rumor, is the fact that there may be a substitute over the top of that. I don't know.
I see, okay.
So,
We don't have rumors around here.
I think you just confirmed you.
backroom mumbling.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way. Let's not call it rumor. Let's call it mumbling.
We can only talk about rumors that happen in the house, not inside.
Is the DAW marijuana bill a good one?
Well, I think my personal belief it's better than the Madsen bill, because it's a measure twice, cut once situation. I've been to Arizona as a legislator. I saw what they did in Arizona. I went on special legislative trips, not trips, but tours of the dispensary and how it works. I've been in Colorado to see how it works there. I've actually been there where you see it grow. You see the dispensary where you can get it in all kinds of wonderful gummy bears and all this kind of stuff, and it really kind of blows me away, vape and all this kind of, and I don't think we want to go down that road here in Utah. We want to deal with the medicinal part of marijuana, and in order to really get to a point where you have the dosage and the proven outcomes is through the research and the FDA approval. Then it can be distributed through the professional, proven pharmacy. And we don't have to create dispensaries. When I was in Arizona, I wasn't being lobbied. I wasn't being lobbied by sick people. I was being lobbied by dispensary owners who want to bring dispensaries. This is a profitable business. But I don't want to, my personal feeling is I don't want to create another distribution system. We already have a proven distribution system, but it's hindered by what federal law is. And that's why Shizawa's resolution is, I think, the best way for us to deal with it for right now. And it's this measure twice and cut once, and the Vickers bill does take it slower, and there's more fail-safes put into that bill than the other.
I think the one thing is we've got to get our congressional delegation on the page with us to get this down from a first to a second, so that we can then move forward. The entire nation can then move forward and find solutions using some of the positive effects that are being done with marijuana. And it's not creating a recreational...
Right now, we don't have our federal delegation on board with that.
That's right.
And given the fact that it had overwhelming support here, why not? Why is that? What are they?
Don't know. Yeah, good question.
That's probably a good question to start asking.
Yes, please.
Because we don't have control over them.
That seems one issue that everybody's sort of on the same line on here.
It's easy to say it's all the federal problem. It's not our problem.
Any other questions?
Back on Medicaid, earlier on, we talked about how you wanted that to start in the House this session. Can you kind of elaborate on that a little bit, and if that was ended up being the right way to go? I know you don't pass the bill, obviously, but just your thoughts on that.
I think it was the right way to go. We obviously had shown that we had an interest in this and passing Healthy Utah last year, and
And the year before.
And, well, it wasn't Help Me Utah the year before, it was the Shizawa model, which is actually the Health Systems Reform Task Force model. But, and so and then it didn't get passed through the House, so it was best to start there to see what they could actually agree to and then bring it over here, because we'd already shown that we had a propensity to, a positive propensity towards some kind of a solution. And I don't know what the votes were, but it was probably pretty overwhelming over here to pass.
Very overwhelming. You know, what a great process this is. I think about that bill being a good example of that. It's a 3-year process to get where we are on this, and we have to have agreement from both houses and the governor before we can get a measure passed. And this was just a really good example of how that works. We could pass something, but we couldn't get it through the House. And the governor wanted something, and it couldn't get through. But finally being able to get it started in the House and then get it up through the process was how it actually ended up getting to the point where we were able to pass something. And I just think it's a really good example of how good our process is and how things usually finally work. And we may not all have gotten exactly what we wanted out of that entire process, but the process worked and we ended up with something. So I think that was a really good example of that.
And the one thing is I think this is an election year, and the public, in all the polling that I've seen, is very, very in support of doing full Medicaid expansion. And that's probably going to be part of the debate, I hope, in the electoral process to see where we go on this.
Do you have any questions from any of our viewers?
We do. We have a few that came in over Twitter. The first one is, did the House ask the Utah Senate to put Democratic bills at the bottom of the calendar? If not, why the shift?
You weren't on the floor when that happened. They came in and they were filtered through there, and then there was this motion made.
This last day, we kind of turned our board over to the House, and they kind of turned their board over to us. We prioritize bills, and we have a list we take over, and they're prioritized, and they work down the list, and they bring over their lists, and we work down those. So they do have, in fact, control of our board. So I was off the floor a little bit too. I'm not sure what happened this morning, but that's the way the process is working today. You'll see some movement of bills up and down as has been determined by House leadership on our board.
And we've got bills that obviously we allow members of our body to prioritize their bills, but we have bills like the authorization for our administrative rules, and that bill hasn't passed yet, and it's got to pass. We need to get that over. We'll have to sometimes we have to reshuffle to take care of some of these must-pass bills that somehow got low priority to it and haven't passed. So you're going to see the board shuffle as we go through this, so that's what we're trying to do.
But to answer the question, I don't know that the House has even done that. Sounds like they might have.
They brought over a prioritization, they brought it in, and then they reprioritized.
Yeah, and they could place bills on top of, and maybe they did, to make sure the Republican bills get passed out before the House bills, or the Democrat bills, but I didn't know that.
And they put it on top of 130. I was watching that bill, and that's a bill I would like to pass. I've got an amendment that I need in it, and so I'd like it to come back up and hopefully it'll come to the top. And that was Patricia Harrison. I don't think it was intentional, but anyway.
Other questions?
Yes, two more quick ones. This one also came in from Twitter. Why repeal the 17th Amendment when you have less interest in the state's interests than we do?
So repeat that.
Why repeal the 17th Amendment when you have less interest in the state's interests than we do?
It's kind of an inflammatory statement, but I think the thing is and of course, I voted against the resolution. I believe people should have direct election votes wherever they can. But I also know that what the debate was, and I wouldn't say we're not interested. We send a number of resolutions back to Washington every year, asking our elected officials back there to respond to our issues. So we do have interest.
So there's some great arguments for us to repeal it. That's the way the original Constitution was. And the Senate was designed to be a representation body for the states. So state legislatures elected the Senate, and the House was the House of the people. They were elected by popular vote. And that created a balance over the years, and there was some problems with that, and it was changed, but we're seeing today where the states are losing jurisdiction to a central government. There's a lot of people across the country that don't like that, and one of the arguments is that we changed the 17th Amendment where the states weren't represented anymore. Both are populist bodies, and so there are some arguments on both sides of it, and you've heard both of them today. So thanks for that question.
Awesome. The last question comes from a certain former chief deputy over in the House. He asks a rather existential question to round out the session. Why are we?
Why are we? Does his first name start with a J? Well, why are we? Well,
We're created by the Constitution.
we go home tonight and we're going to face all our neighbors, and they'll all be asking, what did you do up there? And we have to answer that hard question now, and we'll know more about that, I think, after the session's over and our laws go into place and the effect of those laws.
I've got to go back to my day job first thing in the morning. There's no rest. I go right back to go to work and have to make a living like all the other people of the state. And I think that's a good system. We have a short 45-day session, and then we have to go back out and go to work. And as the president said, rub elbows with our constituents and try to make a living like everybody else. And I think that makes a really good system of government.
Live with the laws we passed.
Yeah.
If there's no other questions, this is our last Senate chat. We're kind of sad.
But relieved the 45 days are over.
But we are relieved that the 45 days are almost over. So thank you, media representatives. We appreciated spending some time with you this session, and we appreciate Senator Davis and the minority party and all our members here in the majority party who've participated in this daily event. And if we don't do it in interim, then we'll just see you next year in the legislative session. Thank you very much.
President, you've done a great job.
And the process worked.